welcome back to the Unfiltered Podcast, everybody. As always, my name is The Keb.
I'm Jay Jones.
St. Joe and the Hizzy.
And we hope everybody's doing great out there, including our Florida friends, and especially South Florida, that have impending Hurricane Ian. We have a great guest for you this week, as teased in last week's episode. Our guest this week is a professional hypnotist and a YouTube creator of hypnosis and meditation content for his over 200,000 subscribers. Now, guys, his journey as a produced screenwriter of several independent films and spending 25 years as a professional stand-up comedian, feeling like his life had hit a wall, especially personally with a divorce, being a single dad, stuck in a loop of bad relationships and struggling financially. He realized something needed to change, that something wasn't just his outside world. He knew that everything was inside of him. That's when he discovered the power and the ability of the mind through meditation and hypnosis. Lord knows we could use some help with the ability of the mind. I would like everyone to please give a big unfiltered welcome to Mr. John Moyer.
Yes. Thank you. Officially an unfiltered welcome. I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. We've done our due diligence on you, and we've got you have an interesting story and an interesting job. I do stand up.
Oh, cool.
I've got a question about that later, but I kind of like to hear real quick what the journey that led you to discover hypnosis.
Well, I was always fascinated by the mind, but, stand-up comedy that was my life. I was doing that professionally. I graduated from theater and film school, and right after that, I was going on the road doing comedy. And of course, to me, I got my degree, emphasis was in screenwriting. So it was all part of the entertainment, being funny. And that was, the stuff that, that I was into, and it was my passion. But the thing that they teach you in screenwriting is that all drama is conflict. So it's like, you're not going to have a Home Alone if there's not a kid left home alone, with burglars. So I kind of took that and put it, in the framework of jokes and comedy. So I figured the more dysfunctional, the more drama there was in my life, the funnier I could be. And that's essentially, what I was talking about. But I could be funny on stage, but, it was like the sad clown or the happy clown, whatever the hell it is, laughing on the outside and crying on the inside. That was essentially me. And kind of when I got into that dark place, as I call it, I realized something needed to change. And I realized that if anything was going to change, it had to be me. So I started doing, meditation and self-hypnosis, and suddenly my personal outlook changed. And when I decided I was happy on the inside, I didn't have anything else to joke about. I didn't want to rant or be funny on stage anymore. And that's kind of what took me in the direction of going from a stand-up comedian to doing stage hypnosis, which, was still funny. But it was a more interesting experience for me. And it was no longer about me. And it was just about, what we can do with the mind.
So do you do shows like hypnosis shows, like in comedy clubs?
Yeah, I was performing. What I did was when I started doing hypnosis, I was able to go to the agents and the bookers and the managers and the event planners and all these people that I had done stand up for and said, hey, look, I got something brand new now. I got a whole show of hypnosis. So I wound up doing, I kind of started doing it in, the comedy clubs because that was the easiest place to get into first. But then I wound up doing, corporate events and, university events. I was, able to open up myself to, being able to do high school events. And then I was performing for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And so that's what I was doing. But then when my YouTube channel kind of took off doing the hypnosis and meditation content, I've kind of semi-retired from doing stage hypnosis shows.
Nice. I was going to ask you, first of all, your YouTube is, or your webpage is, your website's pretty awesome. And We have merchandise on our website as well.
We're going to have a visitor too, by the way, up here. If my dog decides to.
That's awesome. On your website, I noticed that you have some merchandise in your store, which is pretty awesome. You're wearing a hat from that.
Yeah.
And, but one of the coolest ones was a T-shirt that says, "I sleep with the hypnotist."
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, not necessarily the most original line. There's a lot of, hypnotists that when they have it on their, like they do their shows, it would be like, a really good friend of mine is Richard Parker, the incredible hypnotist, and he's got a T-shirt that says, "I slept with Richard Parker." I decided to keep that a little bit more, generic but yeah.
Well, it led me down the path of asking that. I know you had mentioned in your bio, you mentioned that you had been through a divorce and some failed relationships.
Yeah.
And some other things. Have you ever hypnotized a woman into thinking that you are everything she's ever wanted?
Well, my wife feels that way, but there was no hypnosis involved, so it worked out really well.
Okay.
But I will tell you this though. There's one of the when I first started doing hypnosis, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're able to kind of have this sway, with the individuals. At first you think it's really cool, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you start to kind of realize your moral obligation. I guess you could say that, when I first started doing hypnosis, and it was at the time when my wife and I just kind of, first started dating, when we were first being together. And, she wanted me to, she wanted to experience hypnosis. So, I was hypnotizing her. And there was this one time where we went to bed and I realized that we were out of coffee, for like the following morning. And I was doing hypnosis on my wife. And of course we were just dating at the time. I said, but in the morning, you're going to get up and you're going to feel really inclined to go to the store and get coffee. And that was the weirdest thing, because she was like up at 6:30 in the morning. She's like, I have no idea why I'm up, but I really want to go get coffee. And she went out and get coffee. And that for me, it was like, oh, wow. Yeah, this.
Yeah, I think that, I asked that in jest and on a joking side. Obviously, people that are, I guess you're a professional hypnotist.
Yes.
I mean, there are accreditation sites and there are degrees that people can get now in hypnosis and I guess the therapeutic side of it for people.
Yeah.
And
I think it's called hypnotherapy, right?
Hypnotherapy. Yeah.
Perfect. And I was wondering, obviously with that, I mean, you're not going to take a Hippocratic oath as a hypnotist,
No.
but there the moral obligation, like you said, you're not going to get somebody to think they want to, do bad things or stuff.
Well, and
like
there's guys that have been brought. I mean, it was just a few years ago. There was a guy. He was an attorney. He was a divorce attorney. I don't know why he was involved in hypnosis, but he was like hypnotizing his clients. And there was some nefarious things involved, and he wound up, getting brought up on charges. So, but
wow.
Yeah, there's crazy stuff that does happen. But of course, who wants to like go to jail and tarnish the reputation or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it happens.
So, how does somebody get hypnotized? Like, what's going on there in like their head?
There's 3 different kinds.
Okay.
Yeah, because here's basically what happens. I mean, we all go through hypnosis like every single day. It's actually a natural operational state of the human brain. It all happens to us naturally on our own. It's like when you're watching, it's like with my kids. I'm trying to talk to my kids and they're staring at the screen. They have no idea that I'm trying to have a conversation with them. That literally is kind of a form of hypnosis. The thing is, though, is intentionally triggering that state of mind is something completely different. But the way it happens is you've got the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Between those two, there's this thing called the critical faculty. It's kind of like a firewall that protects our subconscious mind from change, because our subconscious mind, it doesn't want to change. It likes the way things are doing. And I kind of liken that critical faculty to like the bouncer with a red velvet rope outside of a nightclub who determines, who gets in and who doesn't. So basically what you're doing with hypnosis is you're distracting that bouncer with a red velvet rope. So there's a part of the mind that's not paying attention. And basically at that point, you're then sneaking all of the, the hot women into the nightclub, or in the case of, hypnosis, it's, you're inputting the suggestions there.
I was wondering if it's somewhat like, I'm sure everybody's had I don't know if it's a sensation or the feeling of if you've been just, nothing's going on, you're just staring off into space or whatever, but you've become transfixed on something and you find yourself having to like, not kind of snap out of it, but like, whoa, why have I was staring at that for the last, who knows if it was just even for 30 seconds, but
right. It's exactly what it is. Like I tell people, it's like you're reading a book or magazine, get to the bottom of the page, you have no idea what it was you just read, or, that's a form of hypnosis, or you're driving down the road, it's like you're lost in thought. Then obviously, that's hypnosis. Or, if you're out on a date with somebody and you spend the entire time thinking about somebody else, that's a bad marriage. That's not hypnosis. Something I could speak to in the past.
So is it, hey, these are not the droids you're looking for?
That's a Jedi.
Yeah. That's something completely different, but
That's funny.
So can anyone be hypnotized?
Yeah, because we all go through it, right? You actually pass through hypnosis when you fall asleep at night. So, and now going up on stage, let's say, and then having that happen there can be very different than, the droid thing, or somebody just, staring at, the screen and just kind of drifting off. But I always tell people it's like going to the gym. It's like working a muscle, because there was a time for me that I never thought it would ever, like I could ever experience it, that it would ever happen to me. And then when it did happen, I was like, wow, holy cow, this really works. And then I was able to kind of build that up in my mind to the point where it became, much easier for that, for me to be the case. So some people can't, if they think they can't do it. And I always love, the people that say, oh, I can't be hypnotized or whatever, which is, it's, we already, experience it. And the interesting thing too with hypnosis, it can be directly correlated with somebody's IQ. And mistakenly people think, well, the lower IQ, the easier it is. It's actually the opposite. If somebody has average to, high IQ, they're more receptive to being, for being able to experience hypnosis. That's why I always love like the big alpha male that would come up to me like, oh, I can't be hypnotized. And I'm like, well, thank you for admitting that you have a low IQ. I appreciate that. But everybody can go through it and experience it.
Do you find that they kind of need, sorry, say Joe. I was just wondering if, like I said, I think if you buy into allowing yourself to do it, because obviously I believe that if somebody was, if they've got it set in their mind and they're not going to follow the steps or whatever you lead them down in order to be hypnotized per se, would they, like if I said, like, I mean, if somebody decided, well, I'm not getting hypnotized, I don't want to go through hypnosis, and you still were like, I mean, is there a way for you to overcome that? Or is it just like they're not letting you in?
I'll give you a great, that generally would be the rule. So like if I'm doing a show and I call for volunteers, I want people on the stage who are, willing, participants.
Yeah.
If somebody's like, I don't want any parts of this. And I say that's generally the rule, because I did have a case a few years ago where I was doing a Christmas event for, it was a county sheriff's department. And they were kind of a really rough bunch. And kind of getting some volunteers for them, was a little rough. And they had an individual there. She was a woman that was the head of the county jail. And of course, when you're doing like corporate events or private events, everybody's pointing to one particular person and like, you need to go up there and do it. You need to go up there and do it. Mm-hmm. If somebody's willing, that helps. If somebody's not willing, then I would just say, don't even come up on the stage. Yeah. Now, in this particular case, volunteers were a little bit more difficult. So here's everybody telling this woman what, I don't remember what it was, to say Barbara, like, Barbara, you need to go up on stage. And she's like, fine, I'll go up there. And she kind of goes up there, and she was like a tough woman. I mean, she was the head of the county jail, right? I wasn't going to mess with her even if I wasn't doing hypnosis. But she comes up on stage with that attitude. This is ridiculous. This is BS. screw you. This ain't happening. And then an hour later, she opened her eyes and was like, what the hell just happened for the last hour? And then people are like showing, everybody was recording it with their phones, and they're like, look at this. And that's why I always love kind of events like that where people know each other, because then people would come up to me afterwards and they go, now we know this is real, because there's no way that person could fake that, or that would not be real if I didn't know, that person myself, which is like different when you're on the cruise ships and nobody knows each other and everybody's like, were they plants? Was this fake? But yes, for the most part, I would say if somebody's in resistance, then, it wouldn't be a case where, they would probably be able to come up on stage and be hypnotized.
Yeah. I always picture, I think everybody's probably seen like the Good Will Hunting moment. Where he lays down and he's he gets in there and he starts singing and he's I always picture somebody like that coming up and trying to play you and be like, no, I've hit you've got me, and then all of a sudden opening up their eyes and going, no, doesn't happen.
And that's the thing that that I tell people, like, look, if you're going to come up on stage, we prefer people up here who are willing volunteers. If you're going to come up here just to prove to me it's not going to work or you can't be hypnotized, then you're taking the seat of somebody else that could come up here and actually have a good time.
Yeah, right.
And typically what would happen is if you get somebody on stage, that's faking it. And the thing is because people act very differently, have a very different response when they are hypnotized to something versus when they're not hypnotized. So that's some things that you're looking for. And typically you might have somebody, if they come up on stage, and this usually is like with adults, maybe it's not working or they're not being hypnotized, but they feel bad. They're like, and they don't want to like, I thought I was going to embarrass you if, it didn't work. So I was just playing along. Well, you look to spot that and, you dismiss somebody from the stage. Typically what would happen is usually if it's like with high school or college kids, you want people to come up or kids want to come up and be just really over the top and, because they want to be goofy to their friends. And again, if you're noticing that and you know what to look for, then it's like, let's just dismiss these, people from the stage.
Yeah. Have you been involved in any, like hypnotherapy sessions? I mean, to where you're like, I know that, let's say somebody wanted to, they had some, maybe some traumatic experiences, or they had, something in life that, they're trying to get over, drinking or cursing or whatever there might be. That too. Yeah. I mean, that, have you ever,
why'd you have to bring up smoking? Well, look at me.
I don't know, maybe somebody here wants something.
But I was wondering if you've ever assisted in that, because I do know that there are hypnotherapy sessions that people can do to help with that.
Yeah, early on when I was first doing it, I was doing some one-on-one with individuals, but I quickly kind of realized that my passion was kind of for, the artistic side of things, the stage, performance. My wife went and she actually certified in hypnosis, and she will work with people one-on-one. I just realized that wasn't kind of, was my passion. I preferred to be in front of groups of people, working with groups of people, or performing in front of groups of people, or, in the case of YouTube, doing something that is going to benefit, the individual, but doing it through the creative outlets that I enjoy doing.
Yeah. You've got a video and you've got millions of views. There's one video that has 3.3 million views.
Yeah.
It's 8 hours long.
Yeah.
I can't do anything for 8 hours, much less.
Well, you can sleep for 8 hours, right? You can do that. That's what that's for.
Yeah. But you you're talking throughout the whole thing. I listened to, unfortunately, you took up my whole day today.
How did you record that?
First, let me tell you kind of how that. What happened? My YouTube channel kind of happened by happenstance, because what was happening was at the end of shows, hypnotists, we were selling CDs for, the stop smoking, the weight loss, and stop stress and falling asleep and that sort of thing. Well, then CDs became obsolete and people weren't using CDs anymore. And then you had all these stage hypnotists going, well, what are we going to do to sell product after a show? And there was people were like, well, we're going to make MP3 files. We're going to put them on flash drives. And now we can sell flash drives to people. And I just thought, why don't I just cut out, that step in between? And I thought I'd put everything on my website, and then I could tell people to go to my website. They could download it digitally. And then I put some stuff on YouTube thinking, well, if people heard it here, maybe they'd go to my website and they download the stuff. Well, it never occurred to me that people were actually using YouTube as a platform for, hypnosis and meditation. So, and I wasn't even looking at YouTube. I wasn't even checking. And then, like 4 or 5, 6 months later, whatever it was, I had one program for sleep that took off. And so and YouTube very much likes to dial everything into very specific demographics. So my channel kind of became geared towards people that were interested in using meditation or hypnosis for sleep. But I was seeing that there were some people that were doing these 8-hour-long programs. So I'm like, well, why don't I try an 8-hour-long program? And that's kind of what took off. So then my channel became about people that were interested in hypnosis, meditation for sleep. They wanted to put something in to fall asleep to, and then have it play, all night long. And of course, I had things that interest me other than just, having people fall asleep. So I would create these 8-hour-long programs that somebody could fall asleep to, and then play during the night, that were speaking to all these different topics, whether it was, positive energy or reducing stress or that sort of thing. And that's kind of how my channel kind of took off and became known. So there is a demographic of people who, and that's when the people tell me, I sleep with you every night, or I fall asleep to you, or whatever the case may be. And of course, I will get some people that listen to some of my stuff, and then there's always a comment like, shut the F up, I want to try to sleep. Well, my channel's not for you. My channel's for those people that like to have something play in the background for 8 hours.
Right.
You don't have to say F, man. You can say, you can go with the golden word, man.
Okay.
We like to fuck around here.
You can say whatever you want.
I got 2 things real quick. Did I cut you off, St. Joe?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I got 2 things real quick. Number one, can you create a video on YouTube that about halfway through just has the mantra that's like, you do not have to pee. You do not have to pee.
If I did that, I'd be listening to that myself at night at my age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 47, and I got about 4 o'clock in the morning. It's get up.
I don't drink after 7 o'clock at night. Nothing after that.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't do that. So I read a book, and yes, I know how to read, on lucid dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that is...
He has a YouTube vid on it.
If that is a form of hypnosis.
Well, I mean, you're having that experience. You're kind of in an alpha and theta brainwave state. So the brainwave states are similar to what's happening with hypnosis. That would be a little bit different, though, as far as, kind of what you're experiencing or doing relative to that. I mean, you are in a dreamlike state. Because when you're hypnotized, you go down into an alpha and theta brainwave state, and those are kind of where you bounce around, when you're having having a dream. So what's going on with the brainwaves is essentially the same, but there's kind of a different experience.
Yeah, every time I get into a lucid dreaming situation, I always wind up having a lightsaber.
So stupid. It's just so stupid.
But now, when you have that lightsaber, is it because you're like, I like lightsabers, so this is what I want to play with while I'm dreaming?
He thinks he's Darth Vader.
Yeah,
I am Darth Vader.
It's just so stupid. We've heard this like multiple times, and every time I hear it, it's just ridiculous. Oh man!
Have you ever had a like you've gone to an event? Because I know comedians, they get up on stage, and I'm sure you and Kev have both experienced this, where you just fucking bombed that night. It just didn't.
Yes,
as a comedian, it happens a lot.
For like the first 5 years, you bombed.
Kev is still bombing. He's never had a non-bomb.
Right,
and so
right.
I'm just kidding. Kev's hilarious. But
It just happened 2 minutes ago.
I was wondering, have you ever had that in one of your hypnosis shows?
There have been the saying that I use is that sometimes there's a hypnosis show where the mark of a good hypnotist is how far can I keep this from not going off the rails, right? I've been fortunate that every single hypnosis show I've ever done, I've always gotten volunteers, and there have always been people that have, been hypnotized. Now, sometimes you'll do a show, maybe you've only got like a couple of people, maybe you started with, 10. I mean, if it's a smaller group, then obviously the average is going to be that, the numbers are going to be smaller. But, then it's weird because there's shows where you've got really good volunteers. The volunteers are hypnotized and they're animated and they're great, but the audience is just like dead. Or you have volunteers that aren't that great, but the audience thinks it's, the funniest thing that they've ever seen. And, there's sometimes you're up there on stage, and you get the volunteers and you think, okay, good, made it this far, right? And then you're going through the, the induction. And when you get through and you've got people that are hypnotized, you're like, okay, cool. But sometimes when you're whittling those numbers down, man, there's people that are, going off the stage and you're just like, holy cow, man, I hope I can, keep these people or this works out. Or the weird thing is like, doing the cruise ships, I would only ever do 2 shows in one night in the case, for the course of the cruise. And there might be a show that's great. Like the early show is great and the late show sucks, or it's flipped around, and somebody that'll come up to you and go, man, that was the best show. I loved it. It was the funniest thing. And you're thinking that they saw the late show, which was great. I'm like, oh, which show were you at? And they saw the early show where it just, you thought it sucked. But yeah, I know there's been stories of guys, hypnotists that, they brought people up, nothing happened. Right. And there's nobody on the stage and they're like, sorry, guys. Been very fortunate. That's never been the case for me.
So now on the cruise show and the cruise ships, that's an interesting thing that you say that, because the early show is usually a clean show and the late show gets a little bit more risky or
right.
dirty, or however you say that. So a question has there been, I guess there are kind of 2 questions here. Has there been something that as a comedian, you've always are like, okay, I want to make this funny. I want to make it interesting. So I'm always thinking on that next, like if I'm going to hypnotize somebody, what am I going to do to make it funny? And has there been something that you've gone, I've tried this and it didn't work, almost to the point where it bombed, but you're like, I'm going to think this is funny, but nobody else thought this was funny. I mean,
there are things you come up with these ideas in your mind because you're creating these situations for the volunteers that are on stage. And sometimes you think, oh, this is going to be a really funny bit the way that I try this. And it's, again, it's just like when you're doing stand-up, you write a joke, maybe you think it's funny, right. And then you get up on stage and then, nothing happens. And yeah, there have been some times where I try, okay, I'm going to try it, but this way I'm going to do this one particular thing. And then you do it. And then, yeah, the individuals that you hypnotized, they followed through with that and they've gone through it. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't, play out well, with the audience, because it's not just merely one joke. You're creating situations that you have to have the overall situation be funny. And then, of course, you have to have beats within that situation, that are funny. Or right. Sometimes you and again, it's even with an individual skit, even if it's going to last 5 or 6 minutes, you still kind of have that 3-act structure. There's got to be a beginning, middle, and an end. And sometimes you can do something because it's like with some movie where they pour all this money into the special effects and there's great special effects, but the story sucks and it's not interesting. And sometimes it's the case with hypnosis too, because you've got this really cool phenomena that's happening with the mind, but yet whatever they're doing, they've just got a lightsaber and it's not interesting. So.
Right.
Lightsabers are always interesting.
But you know what I mean? Like you go to the hypnosis shows and you always see somebody, they'll say, I'm going to make you cluck like a chicken. I'm going to make you, the standard things. I mean, was there one thing that you're like, this is what I'm going to do? And it just was like, I don't know. I mean, I watched a couple of the videos and you're like, okay, yeah. you're really hot and you're sweating or you're freezing or something. Is there one that sticks out in your mind? Like,
I mean, yeah, there's been stuff that I have come, now off the top of my head, digging back,
sure.
Something that maybe, I've tried, you try it once or twice, that I go, well, yeah, that just didn't, there was one bit that I did that actually, it was actually kind of funny. But then it was just, I always kind of had a hard time figuring out a way to have that kind of big, climax for the ending. But I would do this thing where I would tell certain people on the stage that whenever they heard words that rhymed, that, they thought that they were like at a concert, and it was, it was really cool. Like, if it was like hat and tack, words like that. And then I would tell somebody else that they thought that they were there for this really, it was a poetry reading, and they would read poetry to people, and they were taking it, very seriously. And then I'd wind up giving them, going back to, giving people the suggestions. And this is why we struggle, because there's a lot of setup for this. But I would tell people that if they heard the word ham, they thought it was really funny. And some people thought the word ham was profane. So then I give the person the book, and then they're reading Green Eggs and Ham. So they start to read Green Eggs and Ham, and they're taking this very seriously. Then all of a sudden, you got people some people are laughing, and then other people are offended, and then some people think that it's a concert, and it was actually pretty funny, kind of in that moment. But then I always it was difficult to figure out how can I take this to have kind of a big climax. It just kind of sometimes it's like Saturday Night Live. Sometimes there are skits that are really funny, but then it's like it just ends right there. There's nothing. And that was just, and then you go back and you kind of look at the overall concept, and you think, okay, how can I whittle this down? How can I tighten this up? Because there are skits that I would do that I had done that I just thought, I'm overcomplicating this. There's just too much setup, and there's too much explanation, and there's too many suggestions. There's just, there's easier ways to, simplify stuff.
Right. Right.
Because
is it possible to have too many suggestions?
Well, when I say too many suggestions, if you got 20 people on stage, which I've had that be the case where, and you got to think the time between you're telling people to sleep, you've got a whole audience out there that, of course, they're watching this, and for the most part, they hang on everything. But if you're spending time with a lot of exposition, it draws things out relative to the audience, the amount of time, especially when you're on the cruise ship, because I've got 45 to 50 minutes to do a show on the cruise ship, which when I first started doing hypnosis, my shows were like an hour and 15, 90 minutes. So yeah, sometimes there can be, you just got to learn to whittle it down and, just kind of knock things off as quickly as possible so you can get right to the, the funny stuff.
That makes sense.
So let's cut to the chase there, John. How do you hypnotize somebody?
You take a lightsaber and you wave it back and forth in front of them.
No, I mean, the old timey things where the dude takes the
watch, and that's relative to distracting, the conscious mind. So what you're doing is you're distracting the conscious mind. So you open up that, that put down that firewall so you can get into the, the subconscious mind. And there's different ways that you can distract the conscious mind. You can divert the attention. You can confuse it. You can overload it. Again, like with confusion, or making it, kind of overthink, or paying attention, like, to the pocket watch, where now it's focused on this, but now we're able to say things, because there's things that you're saying that the conscious mind is going to register one way, and the subconscious mind is going to, register another way. So that's basically what you're doing, is you're just distracting that, conscious mind with myriad of, different techniques that, hypnotists, utilize, just be able to open that door and start giving the subconscious mind the suggestions. And then that's what, takes everything over.
So can somebody get stuck in it?
No, you can't, which is a common question that a lot of people ask.
The reason I ask is I was watching TV last night, and I watched this movie called Office Space.
Yeah.
And this guy's like stuck in hypnosis because the hypnotist died. Yeah. Which great movie, by the way. But yeah, you can't get stuck in hypnosis. And the only time that I really have to go out of my way to say that is typically with like high school or college kids. You have to say you can't get stuck in hypnosis, because there have been cases, or I've had it happen with friends of mine, where you get some kid that goes up on stage and they're always faking it. So they want to act like they can't come out of it. So it's a big deal, and they're drawing all this, attention to stuff. And so I just let people know,
it can happen, and it's not going to happen tonight. So I say that to just be able to check off the box, so some kid doesn't think, oh, I'm going to go up there and, fake it, draw a bunch of attention myself.
What's the typical time frame that you would say in your shows, or just in general? If you were going to hypnotize, St. Joe, obviously we're in a time frame here, but like we're on stage and you're like, okay, what is it? Is it 20 minutes, 15, 30? What is it?
When I'm on stage, you've got about, maybe 5, 7, 10 minutes at the most to be able to go through that. And the thing is when, if you're working with somebody one-on-one, there's kind of a feedback loop. You can kind of be able to gauge them to kind of understand what might be working best for that individual, because the approach you take with one individual is not going to be the same that you take with another individual. And when you get people up on stage, you've kind of work from the perspective of one size fits all. You're throwing mud up against the wall. How much is going to stick? Yeah. Now, the thing is that when you have, one audience versus another, now, if I'm working with, if I'm in front of a group of high school kids or college kids, I could take a very different approach versus the approach that I'm going to take if I've got a bunch of, corporate people, on the stage. So in effect, you do have to kind of, match yourself and build a rapport with the audience that you're, in front of. Because the whole thing is the moment you walk out on stage, obviously you want the audience to be receptive to you. Yeah. You want the audience to like you. You want the audience to be willing to come up, on stage. And one of the things that I did early on was that I worked a lot of my stand-up into what I would call the pre-talk before I invited people on stage, because I'm like, they're going to laugh, they're going to warm up, they're going to like me, they're going to want to come on stage. But, the thing is that, you guys know there's typically an attitude when a comic's on stage is that I'm the smart ass, I'm smarter than you, and I'm kind of better than you. So don't, screw with me or whatever. And when I was kind of coming from that, a little bit more of a stand-up approach in the front, I realized that was a little put offish to audiences. They were more hesitant to come up on stage because they're like, I don't want to go and be up there and be the, the butt of his joke. So I actually had to dial back some of my being funny, up front, just so audiences wouldn't feel, more, standoffish.
No. Is that a bad attitude as a comic to have, that I'm better than you? And
that's what all comics have,
Ain't that the truth? My mentor in comedy said something to me a long time ago that kind of just blew my mind, opened it way up. And what he said was that if you stop looking at, what's funny and just realize that comedy is life exaggerated. And it really, when I started looking at things that way, it really now. So is hypnosis kind of like the brain exaggerated, or would you classify it that way? And
I don't know if I would use the word exaggerated. I would say maybe it would be, I don't know if the word skewed is right, but you're basically you're scrambling the connections a little bit. When I say scrambling the connections is because you're making an association to something that normally the brain would have a completely different association with. So you're just kind of putting it through a completely different, prism.
I would think that it'd be more, your brain would be more open, obviously, to suggestion.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. I mean, so you're it's kind of like when euphoric or total enlightenment, as the Dalai Lama might say.
Yeah, and you do physically feel euphoric when you participate in hypnosis, because you're getting this rush of dopamine that's and endorphins that's going through. But when you talk about just like talking about the connections, and what makes it funny is because like comedy, you're taking almost these two completely unrelated ideas or concepts, but then you're finding a through thread for the two of them that kind of connects them and makes them, funny. So what, of course, would make, a situation in hypnosis funny is one of the examples that I love to use is that I had a woman on stage. She was a medical doctor, and I told her that her belly button was missing. So, and this was kind of an interesting collision between, the conscious mind, the logic mind, and the subconscious mind, kind of what was going on there, because she gets up on stage and she's looking around, for her belly button. And of course, obviously, that's not a real thing, that your belly button would go missing. But here's this professional woman who was a doctor, and it was hysterical to the audience because she's walking around looking for a belly button, and she really believed it. And it was funny because she was going, I'm a doctor. This is medically impossible, but it's happened to me. I've lost my belly button. So you're just creating these strange, bizarre situations that do happen to just, be funny. And it's the reaction of the people. That's what it's not necessarily about me. It's what the people are experiencing, what they're going through that makes, everything, so funny.
Right. Is there and you may have already answered this, but I'll ask it again. Is there a benefit physically?
Yeah, there is, because what happens, not only do, you're having the emotional, benefits because, endorphins and dopamine, but one of the things that happens is that your body's also getting, there's an increase of antioxidants. And the thing that's interesting is hypnosis and meditation are actually sister states of mind. So you've got the same things that are happening there. And one of the things that happens too is that the equivalent of like 15 minutes of hypnosis is like the equivalent of, basically, about 4, maybe 5 hours of a full night's deep sleep. So you get this recharge of energy that happens, which was a huge draw, especially when I was on the cruise ships, because I'm laying out for people all of these things that you're going to be able to experience when you come up on stage. So you're stacking the deck for people to want to come up on stage and participate. And without fail, even though I don't think it's that amazing to me, but I would always say, when you participate tonight, the few minutes that you spend on stage is actually the equivalent to a full night's sleep. And you would always hear people ooh and ah, and they were like, oh, I want to experience that. And especially on the cruise ship, you'd have a lot of people that would come up, and then people would come up to me like the next day or a few days later, and on the cruise ship, and they were like, you were right. I can't believe how amazing, I slept, as a result of going through that, that experience. So you can have this, surge of energy where you feel really good. But at the same time, your body's filling up with, melatonin as well. So you're going to have, a really good night's sleep. So you're getting that. And then of course the long-term benefits, of having an increased boost of antioxidants, which is, they've done tons of studies on people that meditate and how that's influenced, their immune system. So yeah, there's a ton of physical benefits that happen.
Interesting.
That is cool. We haven't really touched on this much, but correct me if I'm wrong. You graduated with a degree in theater and film.
Yep, I did. Mm-hmm.
So I'm gathering that experience and what you learned there kind of helped you create your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it did, because of the fact that, I've always kind of considered myself a writer. So of course, putting together the scripts for the videos that I do, on YouTube, I'm able to, incorporate, kind of what I've learned relative to, writing about expressing an idea. And then of course, now combining that with what I know about hypnosis. So it's expressing an idea hypnotically. And then, of course, being able to combine, the things that I've learned as far as, video editing and audio editing and all the kind of those behind the scenes production stuff. Everything kind of came together in a way that all these different separate areas of my life that at one point I would think would be completely unrelated, but then they all kind of, came together. So it was like this track record of all these experiences that I had in the past, just tied together in a way that I was just like never intended, never expected, but have certainly, appreciated, being in, having the opportunity to do what I do now.
If you had to, obviously we had, you're on here and we're all three of us are invested, curious, and about hypnotism. My question is, if you had to, I guess, get across one thing about hypnotism that people might, maybe not in such a negative light, but they are just, they're like, something they think negatively about hypnotists or hypnotism that you would like to put out there.
I would tell them hypnosis is not of the devil. You're not going to be possessed. Nothing demonic is going to happen. Which
that's
that always
funny.
That it it is, and then on the surface, you kind of think that's silly or ludicrous, but then yeah, there are people that truly believe, and especially sometimes I will get people on my YouTube comments that they're going to want to go post these long Bible verses, chapter and verse, and they're pounding the keyboard with 18 exclamation marks, telling me you're going to be possessed of the devil. It's going to be it's going to be demonic.
Wow.
And the thing is that's just. It's based in people not necessarily having a true knowledge of what's going on. Is that what the GFY stands for in the background?
That is for those fucking people that you're talking about. That's like half my set is about those fucking people.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the thing is if you could just kind of explain to people. So I'll give you a couple of really interesting examples of that. So I live in Utah, predominantly, Mormon population, and the Mormon.
BYU.
I did go to BYU. I did go to BYU, and I have, and I'm no longer, practicing in the Mormon Church. I have nothing against, the Mormon Church. I still culturally can relate, and and feel, connected with them. And the thing is the Mormon Church has, what they call the Bishop's Handbook, which is, and it's an official authorized manual from Salt Lake City that goes out to, every church, across the globe that says this is how we do things and this is how things are operated. And they do have in there that hypnosis should not be done for public displays or, any of that stuff. But now the interesting thing is Mormon audiences are some of the best audiences that I've ever performed for. And I've performed for a ton of Mormon audiences. It's just never for, a sanctioned, Mormon show. So like BYU, absolutely not. BYU will not have any stage hypnosis shows, but you go, 5 miles away where the Utah Valley University is, where I've performed a bunch of times. Essentially the same demographic, of audience members, great shows. But there was a show I did a few years ago, and before the event, and it was a kind of a convention. It was a nationwide convention. It happened to be in Utah, but the event planner came up to me. She said, "Look, just so you know, and it was mostly women. They said a lot of these women here are from the deep South, and there's already been whisperings. People have been talking about, well, the hypnosis, is this appropriate? Isn't this kind of evil and satanic, and God wouldn't approve?" And I said, it was a good thing that I knew that, because when I went up on stage and I did the pre-talk, I said, look, we're created in God's image, right? So we have the ability to be hypnotized. This is literally a power that we have. So this is something that God has endowed us with, to be able to experience, this ability. And of course, putting them at ease to know nothing salacious was going to happen. And the funny thing is I think I probably had maybe 12 or 15 chairs set up for volunteers. When I called for volunteers, they had to bring up like another 6 or 8 chairs, because more of these, more of the women wanted to come up than I had, room for. And then it was so interesting to hear them afterwards, because they'd never seen anything before like that in their life. And of course, the women that participated, that actually were hypnotized, were like, oh my God, I feel amazing. This is incredible. So it's just kind of a matter of letting people know you're not going to be taken over by demons. You're not going to lose control. Nothing crazy is going to happen. And it's just, so much of that is just, based in, but if I did tell people, hashtag GFY, I wouldn't get volunteers on stage.
Hold on, because Kev's getting ready to hammer this religion stuff.
No. I just real quick. I just want to say, those people, if they were at my show, you're a better man than me, because I'd have been like, yeah, dude, you're fucked. You're going to hell. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? That's how I was when I did stand up. That was my whole attitude, doing so. I was like a really angry, and that was the thing. I had to, because that was probably who I was, it's like Billy Crystal's line from Mr. Saturday Night. It's a comic's job to call bullshit when he sees bullshit. Yep. And that's what, as a comic, you feel endowed to do. You want to get up there and you want to tell everybody, why they're idiots and why they're full of shit and why this idea or this, whatever the case may be. But
now I'm seeing the light with Kev. I am seeing light as to why he is a pure-blooded comedian.
Real last one, and then you can go real quick. And this is kind of tongue-in-cheek question here, but you've done shows in Utah. I'm sure you've done the where the Utes are, maybe the Utah Utes.
You mean
the University of Utah?
University of Utah. I've done shows up there. I don't think I've ever done any shows for the students. Oh, I was talking about Utah Valley University, right. Yeah.
Have you ever done a show for the FLDS?
No, well, I have had them at some shows. I've had them. There was the funny story
because those guys need to be hypnotized, man.
Yeah. Well, you look at the hair. That's hypnotic enough, right there.
Really, seriously.
But no, I had done. This was, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. I remember doing a show in outside of Salt Lake, and it was in an amphitheater. I forget who I was opening for, but and I was making polygamous jokes, all kinds of polygamous jokes.
Nice.
And people were coming up to me after the fact, and and I didn't even see this, but there was like one of the rows. There was a whole polygamous family. It was like the husband and however many wives, that he had there. And they're like, were you doing that? Did you see I'm like, no, I didn't see them, but you see them walking around, Utah all the time. When you first see it, it's kind of like something out of a movie or a TV show, but then you're just like, okay, they're here.
Or a fantasy. I was going to say, have you, it's probably too much of a good thing, but if you actually, have you had an occasion when you're on stage and you've got people hypnotized, or let's say it's only a couple or whatever. I mean, because in a group situation, it might not happen to where you could be so specific, but have you had anything that's backfired to where you're like, oh my gosh, I got to bring this person out right now. Like I got to wake them up because this is, like you said, like you didn't realize that maybe this person had some kind of trauma in their life or a bad event. And you're like, oh, let's do this. And the next thing you know, it's like way out.
Yeah. The only thing, and I know there's been some things that happens, with some hypnotists doing shows. The only weird things relative to that, there's a thing in hypnosis called an ab reaction, meaning an abnormal reaction, where something somehow in some way within a person's subconscious mind comes up and is connected at that moment. They start to freak out. Yeah. And I've only had that happen probably maybe 3 or 4 times. And the weird things is it always has seemed to be like, a 16 or 17-year-old kid at, some event like that. And the nice thing is my wife would come to me during all of these, any event that I would do. And if I immediately see something that might be just a little odd with something, if there's something going on with somebody, because if you're just on stage by yourself, you've got somebody freaking out and you've got these other people. And that is something that, it very, very, very rarely happens, but it can happen. So it was always nice for me to be able to, point out, to my wife that there's something happening with somebody over here. And then my wife can just go over and immediately just work with them and then calm them down and, everything's fine. But yeah, it is. But, there's hypnotists that have done stuff where, there was a skit that maybe there are still some people that do it. They think it's funny where they would take off their belt and, tell the volunteers it was a snake. Right. And they're waving their belt around and people would freak out. That's
not funny.
No, the audience would think it, maybe it would be, but yeah, there's sometimes stuff can go sideways relative to that. And that's the thing, because when you're doing the show, you have to keep in mind, obviously, people's safety. You don't want people flying around the show. You don't want people falling off stage, because there's incidents that have happened where, hypnotists have gotten sued or something has happened. So you've got to be, you're spinning all these plates at the same time, because you got to keep something moving. You got to keep something funny. You have to know kind of how this person is responding, what person is going to be good for what skit, and at the same time making sure that everybody on stage is safe.
Yeah.
So where do you see hypnosis going, like, from here?
The interesting thing that I've kind of found is that And I do talk a lot about hypnosis and meditation. They're interchangeable, kind of. In a way, the same thing is happening mentally and physically. There's kind of a different operational approach, to them. But I'm finding that, more and more people are discovering the power of their minds. Especially, during, the pandemic, you had people that were home and then people that were stressed and they were freaked out. And, there were a lot of people that said, look, we want to find an alternative way to be able to calm ourselves down, to be able to have ourselves, feel better. So more and more people are, discovering, the fact that they can utilize their mind to be able to overcome things, and then of course be able to achieve things as well. And I don't remember how many months ago it was, I did a poll on my YouTube community. I said, how long have you guys, been, practicing meditation or hypnosis, and it was like less than a few months and 0 to 6 months or however long, over a year, whatever. And a lot of people had just been in a very relatively short time, because people have everyday challenges and everyday problems. And they're just like, okay, how can I overcome this? How can I make, a difference? Which is exactly kind of how I began. Because I looked around, I'm like, man, there's some really jacked up stuff happening in my life. How can I push through this and overcome this? And that's, kind of how it happened, with me. And that's the interesting thing too, because most people, if it comes to hypnotherapy, hypnosis always seems to be like the last resort. You always tell people, I tried everything else. I've done all these things. I guess I'll try hypnosis. And then of course they do it. And they're like, wow, this really works.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be remiss too. I know we've touched on the comedic side of it and the act and the shows and stuff, but there is a lot of videos on your YouTube that I would say maybe, I don't know, not so self-help, but I mean of life enrichment, mental enrichment, and stuff, that a lot of good videos. So I think if people are looking for a way to dive into it, whether they want to tiptoe in or dive head first, I think there's a lot of really good information and videos on your website that I found pretty interesting today.
And well, kind of, talking a little bit about kind of how hypnosis works or how it happens, and then tying into what you just said there, Jay. The thing about hypnosis is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not when you're hypnotized. It's like when you have a dream, right? Like no matter how bizarre or strange the dream is, it seems like, it's like real. It's like you're dreaming, but you're like, lightsabers aren't real, but here they are in my dream, right? So when you're experiencing that under hypnosis, so the thing is if like the one of the videos you talked about, it's got 3.3 million views. It's, meeting and connecting with your spirit guides. Mm-hmm. So now why would somebody be interested in connecting with their spirit guides? Maybe because they've got some challenges that they're looking to overcome. There's some answers, or there's something that they're looking for that's going to empower them in their life. Mm-hmm. So now, if they go into a state where they're hypnotized and the mind believes that they're actually having this interaction with their spirit guides, all of the things that I'm saying in that video are just kind of normal, everyday, or I should say they're all positive suggestions that would empower somebody to be able to succeed in their normal everyday life. So instead of just doing a video that says, here's all these affirmations to allow you to feel empowered and less stressed, you package that in the form of spirit guides. And so they're having that experience within their mind, but they're getting all of the, these benefits that are going to make them feel less stressed, or all of a sudden have their mind come up with answers for stuff, or feel more empowered. Got another dog.
Cool. By the way, if lightsabers were real, I could tell you with 100% certainty I would cut something off of myself. 100%.
Accidentally or intentionally?
Accidentally. That's the story that I'm going with. So I have one last question. I know, but and these guys are going to find this hard to believe, and our listeners are going to find it even harder. But I have a problem at night shutting my brain off. You know, like I overthink things, and I think of all the people I should have told to go fuck themselves all day long, you know. And I think of all these people that I yelled at in the car, and I just having trouble, you know, like calming down to where I'm like, okay, where the fuck is the melatonin, you know? How do I fix that?
Here's what I would tell you is to, instead of wanting to tell people to go fuck themselves, you start allowing people their experience and let them just choose for themselves, and you nothing other people's behavior. Because really, do you need other people to fuck themselves in order for you to feel inner peace? Or can you just feel inner peace and then you not give a fuck about what happens to other people?
Oh my God, you need that on replay right there, God.
I think that's like our clip for the week right there.
Do that and find out how quickly you're able to fall asleep.
Will do. I'll put that into practice. And you know who just gave you a big round of applause is the soon-to-be world famous wife. You know, because she gets the brunt of my my rage and fueled day.
Well, and it's funny. There's something that my wife would say. She would say, "Well, how's that working out for you?" And we joke about it, but that was me. I get that understanding. But then all of a sudden, when you're able to turn that around and you're able to literally rewire your mind, where all these other things that people are doing, you really don't, you know, as what my wife would say is, I nothing that, I nothing them, I nothing this, I nothing that, where you're telling, now what's happening is you're telling your subconscious mind, we don't care. It doesn't make any difference. We nothing it. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have a matching physiological and mental response. Your blood pressure's not going through the roof. Your conscious mind isn't pissed off, and you're not laying awake at night with a pounding heart thinking about all this stuff.
That's
wow.
Brilliant.
Wow. Great. We're going to listen to your YouTube for 8 hours tonight.
Where can you find them?
Yeah. This is the part of the show, John. Number one, we want to thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you? And basically, we want to give you, you know, a little bit to promote yourself. And where can they find you? And what's the best avenues? Obviously,
you know, my biggest platform is YouTube. So if you just look up John Moyer on YouTube, you'll probably be able to tell the difference between me and the John Moyer who is the bassist for Disturbed. Right. Sometimes people get that a little bit confused. Or my website's just johnmoyer.com. You go there and then it's got all the, you know, the portals to all my other, you know, social media. And we're going to put all of those links in the show notes of this this episode. So thank you. Go down in your show notes and you can find John there. It's johnmoyer.com. He's big on YouTube and all this. John, thank you very much for thank you guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. You know, and we tell every guest this, that we reserve the right to have you back on. Well, I would love to. I will bring my lightsaber next time.
Absolutely.
All right. We appreciate it, sir. Have a good night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
All right. And there goes John Moyer. That was pretty cool.
That was very interesting.
It was. I so wanted him to hypnotize St. Joe.
I mean, you know, it's one of those things that I wanted to say, can you do it over the video or whatever?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's.
I mean, we didn't hire him to do that. That probably
course, but
requires some. I mean, he gets paid to do that.
So. Everybody's going to say, "Man, St. Joe was really quiet," but I was just so hypnotized by what he was saying that I couldn't say anything.
Was that it?
That's it. I don't know.
Maybe he can hypnotize the fucking Catholic out of you.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I saw Jay had a moment of fear there. Kev's about to go off on the religious folk.
I was like, no,
don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't, because it was, I mean, he was such a good guest. I mean, he was awesome. He was very cool.
That was great. Yeah, that was I didn't know what to expect, but it was very good. It was
Have you guys ever been hypnotized? I never have. So
I have not. I've always wanted to be, but I'm kind of skeptical of the whole thing. But after listening to him, I think that, you know, I was always kind of that guy that he was talking about that would go up and say, "You're never going to hypnotize me." But
Next thing you know, he's got St. Joe shoving hot dogs in his mouth. And see, I would not be allowed to be a hypnotist because it would be really fucked up.
Yeah, you'd be like, all right, you're gonna do this.
Yeah, no, I'd get one show and I'd be banned. Or in jail.
Yeah, it would be like.
What's really funny is there's two things. I at the Comedy Zone here was working a show that a hypnotist was the headliner, right? And kind of like what St. Joe said earlier, that, you know, you get him to cluck like a chicken or all this, but what he did was hilarious. He gave them buzzwords. So when you hear this word, you perform this action. And this old, like 75-year-old man was there, and he gave him the buzzword of night. Like NIGHT, right? Mm-hmm. And when he did that, he had to throw these napkins, but he couldn't let the napkins go. He handed the napkins. You can't let these go until you hear night. And so then he woke him up or whatever. Dude goes and sits down, and the guy's not saying anything. The guy's still hanging on to these napkins. And at the end of the show, he's like, "Good night." Like that, and the dude just threw him up in the air, like as everybody's getting up. It was hilarious.
That's awesome.
And I found it interesting that John lives in Utah and was formerly a Mormon. I was talking to somebody about Mormonism earlier today, and specifically about polygamy, and they were like, "Well, what would you do if you could have more than one wife?" And I said, "I would probably kill myself."
There you go. That was a long way to go for that.
There's a long way to go for a little Mormon.
Yeah,
Mormon. Where Jay was like, you know, what's the problem with polygamy? What's the problem? You know, I've seen
too many people telling you what to do.
I've seen Big Love. You know,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, is it that time?
Stupid motherfucking tweet time with the motherfucking stupid kid.
This one better have a hurricane tweeting it.
Oh, it does.
Because we're about to get blown.
All over.
The first one is, do men look at their wives during sex? First reply, I did once, and she looked very angry. She was looking at me through the window.
Nice.
Matthew says, I have 3 tattoos, 2 piercings. What about you? First comment, I have parents. This one is a brain teaser for you guys. This one, I had to read this one like 6 times. Okay. The tweet says, will you date me? A, yes. B, A. C, B.
Got it.
Nice.
I guess you got to kind of look at it.
Okay.
10 years ago, she rejected me. Now I'm the CEO of Google, and her husband is my employee. First comment. And she still isn't with you. So once a loser, always a loser, motherfucker.
Oh, God. Is that your response? That sounds like
it. Rude.
KEBLIVES tweet.
Rude.
When I said I liked it rough, I didn't mean my entire life. I can identify with that.
I like that one. All
right. If a woman sleeps with 10 men, she's a slut. But if a man does it, he's... First reply, he's gay. He's gay.
Wow. We may have a new leader.
This next tweet, you wanted a hurricane tweet. I saved it for last.
There we go.
I'm not going to name the person who did. It's a major person, okay? And I don't know if it's real or if it's fake.
Why are you not saying it?
Jim Cantori?
This person is probably part of the Illuminati, and you're never going to hear from me again.
Oh,
you know, and I don't know if it's real or if it's fake, but it's fucking funny.
There we go.
So this person, a prominent politician, that she is given a lot of shit for being stupid.
AOC.
I'm not saying it. Okay? I'm not saying it. But this person says, I see people are rushing out to fill up their cars for this hurricane at the gas station. This wouldn't be an issue if they had electric cars. If the power is out for a week, how are they going to get gas? We need to start planning ahead and moving forward.
Oh my God.
If the power is out for a week, how are they going to get gas?
For their electric car.
Electric cars.
Nice.
Yeah, I just put that one in there. So yeah. I'm gathering by your applause. If a woman sleeps with 10 men, she's a slut. But if a man does it, he's gay. is that going, or do we like?
When I asked for life to be rough.
Do men look at their wife's face during
that
sex?
One was pretty good.
Did once, and she looked very angry. She was looking from the window.
I do like that one.
I like that one.
All right, Stupid Tweet of the Week brought to you by the Stupid History Minute. We are forging through. The baseball stadium's almost done there. Almost ready for the Bible. Almost ready for the Bible. Do men look at their wife's faces during sex? I did once, and she looked very angry. She was looking from the window. It's a Stupid Tweet of the Week brought to you by the Stupid History Minute. So stupid.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. So fucking stupid. Yeah.
All right. Oh, so what's going on at Two Penny this week there, Jay?
Well, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So let's go back and let's talk about what we've learned in the past week.
Here we go.
Okay, so
this really hurt your feelings, hasn't this?
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you being fucking royalty and that you think you need to be knighted.
Okay.
Sir J. Jones.
Shall I put my crown on?
I enter the eighth I am.
That's not funny. Yeah.
So can you talk with a British accent?
Of course. But I'm not British. I'm Welsh.
Welsh. That means I'm bloody Welsh.
We speak Welsh.
Okay.
They have their own language.
It's a whole nother language.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Okay, so what's going on with Two Penny?
I'm actually I have a guest lined up, and like with any guest, I love that you actually have confirmations from your guests, and I get some sometimes. So we'll see. I'm not going to put it out there in case they decide not to. I've done that before and cursed myself. So there'll either be a guest or there won't. And if not, I'm sure that I'll find a way to, throw in something good. Who knows? I mean, maybe I'll surprise everybody and bring the Beebs on since he hasn't been on the podcast this week. Who knows?
That's a
surprise. You won't bring him on. He's in the hurricane.
You guys are so. It's 2 days away from making landfall in Tampa.
Well, you guys landfall in Tampa is 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Okay, so it's 24 hours away, and you guys are gonna. I looked at your forecast. You're gonna have some high winds, absolutely. But you're looking at. We get hurricanes up here too. So I guess I'm a little bit.
The Beebs will be waist deep in water by Friday.
Where he lives in a low-lying area that is known for massive power outages, the Green Cove Springs Fleming Island area of Jacksonville. Over here in the forest, over here, I'm just worried that I'll have to take a kayak to get to fucking Publix. But
how much rain does it take to usually get you guys to flood? Because if it rains, let's say if it's high tide and it rains an inch or two here, we're going to have coastal flooding. Where you're at, how much rain? Because you guys are looking at a possible 7 to 10 inches of rainfall within.
It's actually upped from that in the past hour or so. I'm getting these alerts on my phone. It's 11 to 15 right now,
and it's a new moon, so the tide's going to be higher just because of that.
To put it into perspective, during Hurricane Irma, which is a Category 2 hurricane that hit us, kind of indirectly, kind of like this one will, it kind of went up the gut of Florida. Yep. That dropped 7 inches of rain on us. The problem was the pressure, and it was a new moon at the time. The pressure took the water out, and then we have this huge river called the St. Johns River here. And when that water came back into the river, it had nowhere to go but on land, and caused like a ton of problems in downtown Jacksonville.
Got it.
Yeah, so
some places it got up to 20 inches. It was unbelievable.
We're looking at that type of event. Irma, the wind was nothing. I mean, it didn't really blow anything over. It needs to blow over that fucking building on I-4.
Every time that thing pops up, every time the meme comes up and says, "You know your job." Your job.
Hurricane, whatever. Please take this thing out.
It is the ice, the eyesore on I-4.
Yeah, but we joke, but we hope everybody in South Florida. But it's not going to be much in North Florida. But in
which
South
is funny
Florida,
because I think that building's owned by like the 700 Club or something like that. So
the PTL.
I think so. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah. But,
yeah. Did you take
what are you taking a picture of there?
Taking a picture of us, yo?
Yeah.
What are you screenshotting there?
You guys.
Oh, he's gonna make a meme.
I am.
Yeah. Meme of something.
Yeah, I'll do that. I don't care. What
I like it how you just changed your name to Sir J. Jones.
Oh, that's what he's
I didn't do that. The royal family must have done that.
That's what he's taking a picture of.
For those of you that can't see us, because none of you can, on our thing here is everybody's name, and we especially have it on there when we have a guest, so the guest can tell who's who.
Sir J. Jones.
And it said J. Jones the entire fucking time. And now it says Sir J. Jones because apparently King Charles III just flew to New Jersey to knight him.
Yes.
That's exactly what it's going to say here from here on out. It's going to say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I beat. What do I do, say, Joe? I beat the dead horse to death.
Oh, no.
Some people beat a dead horse. No. I don't just beat the dead horse. I get back on that fucker and make it right.
No, you don't. The Beebs does.
Well, me and him were co-conspirators.
No.
We ride it together.
You're fine with it, but the Beebs,
okay,
that guy.
I didn't say that you beat anything with a dead horse. I said that you would tell it to us at length.
The Beebs will beat it, bury it, dig it back up, and then beat it again.
I like that. I'm going to do that. Well, Dicks.
Yes, gotta get it in there. Gotta get it in there.
It's royal whale dicks now to you motherfuckers.
he gets $50 every time he says whale dicks.
That's right.
Gotta get it in there. Hey man,
say Joe, what you got going on? Nothing? No, okay.
I do actually this time. I ordered a little bit of new merch.
Merch?
Yeah, I ordered some new merch that came out on the website this weekend.
Did you get it yet?
I didn't get it yet, but I ordered it. So some of these other people got to get out there. The filthies got to go out in force and go get it.
Seriously.
But
what'd you get?
Yeah.
Other than those fucking gummy bears you're shoving in your fucking mouth 20 at a time.
No, they're candied pecans.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever had the Haribo sugar-free gummy bears?
Don't do that.
No.
I have heard
you should go out and get the.
It's rocket fuel for your ass.
Google it. It's the best thing to Google. Just
apparently,
Google sugar-free Haribo gummy bears.
If you want to.
What was the thing you said?
What
was the TikTok thing you said where the guy said, "I need to look up whatever," and then he's like, "That was a funny TikTok." No, I ordered the tumblers. The tumblers, they look like they should be pretty good. There's some tumblers, and then there's a hoodie that we got out there now, which is looking pretty fine. So
I like that.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
It's like the Flat Earth Day or the Fuck Flat Earth Day shirt. Yeah, which is flying off the shelves at record numbers.
At a rapid pace.
We got 10,000 made. And they're flying off the fucking shelf.
And two sold.
You guys haven't promoted it to him yet.
Yeah.
Well, we're leaving that to you. Yeah. Why don't you call your buddy and see? I would gladly, at this point, have him back on here.
Never.
No.
It's all good.
No.
Gladly, just to see what
we have a special guest next week, right?
We do have a special guest next week. Now, as interesting as hypnosis was, next week is one of those kind of like, you remember when we had the lady on that had the near-death experience?
Oh no.
So some people would kind of
Kathy?
be like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kathy McDaniel, right?
Yeah.
And some people, could be kind of skeptical. It's a really cool story, really cool experience that she had. But just like I said on that episode, to her face, that some people would be skeptical and think that it was bullshit. I would think more people will think that about next week's guest.
Okay.
Oh no.
But I'm really excited to have him on.
Is it one of your top 4?
No, it is not. And to refresh, you know what? I haven't gone through that in a while. Say, Joe, thank you. To refresh everybody's memory, my top 4 were to have a Catholic priest, a member of the Church of Scientology, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or a flat earther. We've killed the flat earther. Not literally, but we've had one on here. But this one's close. It's going to be interesting. People will want to tune in.
I might be able to make the Latter-day Saint one happen.
Specifically, the fundamental Latter-day Saints.
There's some in Jacksonville here, and I might be able to make that happen.
The more polygamous, the better.
Oh boy.
Not that we don't endorse polygamy. That's illegal.
Yeah, this is a Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You want the
as long as that, you can't invite somebody like that on and not have me ask the tough and ridiculous questions. That's not going to happen.
Finding one with a sense of humor might be a problem.
Well, finding any religious person with a sense of humor outside of our buddy the Beeps. You're a Catholic. You're not religious.
That's funny in itself. That's funny in itself.
All right.
It's like for my neighbor used to say, my Jewish neighbor used to say, "Are you Jewish?" And he goes, "Well, I'm Jew-ish."
Right.
So it's kind of funny, but yeah.
So,
all right, man.
So we'll do that. We'll do that next week. We want to thank John Moyer for being our guest this week. All of his links and where to find him, his Twitter, his Facebook, all that good stuff, especially his YouTube, will be in the show notes down below. So please go check him out. If you want,
I'm going to sleep with him tonight.
All right, you got to do that, and just to say nothing of the fact that he's Catholic. So please go check him out. We do have a special guest again next week, which should be maybe as fun and just as interesting,
Cool.
Probably, but very, very, very different. So please tune into that. Again, to our friends in South Florida, please be safe. Hope we get through that as safely as possible. So for St. Joe, my name is the Keb. We will catch you guys next week.
The opinions on this podcast may strike some listeners as vulgar, offensive, or, worst of all, serious. Please adjust your expectations and interpretations accordingly. In other words, lighten the up. For all other concerns, complaints, and court documents, please direct those towards the nearest brick wall. Thank you for listening.